the science and spirit of harmony. Essay number 4, the same sound, a different soul. Why the melody never changes, yet we never hear it in quite the same way. We often believe we are hearing the same notes once again. Yet the music has remained remarkably faithful. It is we who have changed. The child who first heard the melody is gone. The young seeker has changed. The person carrying today's joys and sorrows is someone entirely new. And so, without altering a single note, the same melody begins telling a different story. Introduction. There is a quiet mystery hidden in every melody we return to. At first, we rarely notice it. We believe that we are simply repeating something familiar, a favorite piece of music, a sacred mantra, a prayer, or a hymn that has accompanied us for years. The notes appear unchanged. The rhythm remains the same. The words are identical to those we spoke yesterday, last month, or perhaps 20 years ago. Yet, if we listen carefully, something remarkable begins to emerge. The melody has remained faithful. We have not. The child who first heard those sounds no longer exists in quite the same way. The young adult who searched for meaning through them has also changed. Every joy, every disappointment, every friendship, every loss, every question that life has placed before us has quietly shaped the person who now listens. Without altering a single note, the music begins to tell a different story. Perhaps this is one of the deepest mysteries of human experience. We often imagine that we revisit the same places, reread the same books, or hear the same melodies. But in truth, every return is a meeting between two histories, the history preserved within what remains, and the history written within ourselves. The melody waits. Life changes the listener. And somewhere between those two, a new meaning is born. This essay is an invitation to explore that mysterious meeting place. Not only through psychology and neuroscience, but also through philosophy, music, and the timeless wisdom of contemplative traditions. Because perhaps the greatest transformation is not hidden within the sound itself. Perhaps it is hidden within the one who listens. The melody is not changing with time. Time is teaching us how to hear it differently. Chapter 1. The illusion of repetition. One of the most familiar experiences in human life is repetition. We wake up each morning beneath the same sky. We walk the same streets. We greet familiar faces. We listen to songs we have loved for years. We return to books that once shaped our thinking. We repeat prayers, mantras, poems, and melodies that have accompanied us through different chapters of life. From the outside, these experiences appear unchanged. The melody seems identical. The words remain exactly the same. The ritual follows the same sequence of movements. It is therefore natural to assume that repetition means experiencing the same thing again and again. Yet this assumption hides a remarkable illusion. Nothing that is truly alive is ever repeated in exactly the same way. Modern psychology reminds us that human beings are not fixed observers standing outside the flow of time. Every experience we have leaves traces within us. Memories accumulate. Knowledge grows. Relationships shape our expectations. Joys deepen our gratitude, while losses often deepen our understanding. Even when change is almost invisible from one day to the next, it quietly continues throughout our lives. The person who wakes up today is not precisely the same person who fell asleep last night. This does not mean that our identity disappears. Rather, identity is better understood as something that continuously develops. We preserve a sense of continuity while simultaneously becoming someone slightly different with every meaningful experience. For this reason, repetition is never merely repetition. Whenever we return to something familiar, two histories meet. One belongs to the object itself. The other belongs to us. A melody may preserve every note exactly as it was written centuries ago. A sacred mantra may contain precisely the same syllables repeated by countless generations. A painting hanging in a museum may remain unchanged for hundreds of years. Yet the person standing before these things is never quite the same. Every encounter, therefore, becomes a new encounter. Not because the object has changed, but because the observer has. This simple observation has profound psychological implications. We often believe that meaning is contained entirely within the words we read, the music we hear, or the symbols we contemplate. But meaning is never created by the object alone. It emerges through the relationship between the object and the person experiencing it. The same melody that once sounded beautiful may later become comforting. Years afterward, it may awaken grief. Later still, it may become a source of quiet gratitude. The notes have remained remarkably faithful. The listener has continued to grow. This dynamic relationship between permanence and change lies at the heart of many philosophical traditions. The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus famously observed that no one steps into the same river twice. The river continues to flow, and so does the person entering it. Although a melody appears more stable than a river, the principle remains surprisingly similar. The sound may remain constant, yet consciousness continues to move like flowing water. Psychology reaches a comparable conclusion through a different path. Our perception is never a passive recording of reality. We do not simply receive the world. We interpret it. Every perception is shaped by memory, emotion, expectation, attention, and countless unconscious associations built throughout a lifetime. The melody we hear today is therefore never heard by the same mind that listened years ago. Perhaps this explains why music has such an extraordinary ability to accompany an entire human life. It grows without changing. Or perhaps it would be more accurate to say that it allows us to witness our own growth without asking us to become someone else. The melody waits patiently. Life performs the transformation. And each time we return, we discover that repetition was never repeating the past. It was quietly revealing the present. We do not return to a melody in order to remember the past. We return because the melody helps us recognize who we have become. Chapter 2. Time changes the listener. Time is often described as something that changes the world around us. Mountains are slowly shaped by wind and rain. Trees grow, blossom, and eventually return to the earth. Cities expand, civilizations rise and disappear, and generations quietly replace one another. Yet perhaps the most profound work of time takes place where it cannot be seen. Within us, every passing year subtly reshapes the landscape of the human mind. Our memories become richer, but also more selective. Experiences that once seemed insignificant may later reveal unexpected meaning, while events that once appeared overwhelming gradually find their proper place within the larger story of our lives. Psychologists have long understood that perception is not a fixed ability, but a living process. We do not experience reality with an unchanging mind. Rather, every new experience influences the way future experiences will be understood. In this sense, memory is not a storage room filled with perfectly preserved recordings. It is a living conversation between the past and the present. Every time we remember something, we do not simply retrieve an untouched memory. We reconstruct it. Our current emotions, beliefs, and understanding quietly participate in that reconstruction. For this reason, the melody we hear today is never separated from the person we have become. A hymn that once inspired enthusiasm may later awaken humility. A mantra that once required discipline may eventually become a trusted companion. Music that once filled us with excitement may later offer consolation. Nothing within the melody has demanded these changes. Life has. This gradual transformation also explains why certain sounds seem capable of carrying entire periods of our lives. A single phrase may immediately return us to childhood. A familiar rhythm may awaken memories of people who are no longer with us. Sometimes only a few notes are enough to reopen emotions that have remained silent for years. Neuroscience suggests that music possesses an extraordinary ability to activate widespread networks throughout the brain, including regions involved in memory, emotion, attention, and personal identity. Unlike ordinary information, music often becomes deeply intertwined with autobiographical experience. It is not simply remembered. It becomes part of the way we remember ourselves. Perhaps this is why melodies often survive where words begin to fade. Many people who struggle to recall names or conversations can still recognize songs learned decades earlier. The sound seems to preserve something that reaches beyond ordinary recollection. Yet memory alone cannot explain the entire experience. There is another quiet process unfolding beneath the surface. With time, our values also change. When we are young, we often seek excitement. Later, we begin to appreciate stability. Still later, many discover the beauty of silence itself. As these priorities evolve, the same melody begins speaking a different language. Not because it has acquired new notes, but because we have acquired new ears. The philosopher Hans-Georg Gadamer once suggested that understanding is never the simple recovery of an original meaning. Every genuine encounter is shaped by the history of the one who understands. We never approach a work of art, a sacred text, or a piece of music as completely neutral observers. We always bring our own experiences, questions, hopes, and limitations into the encounter. In that sense, listening is never passive. It is a dialogue. The melody speaks. Our life answers. And from that silent conversation, meaning slowly emerges. Perhaps this is why some people return to the same chant every morning for decades without ever feeling that it has become old. The repetition is real, but the listener continues to evolve. Every sunrise illuminates a different person. Every season leaves another gentle mark upon the soul. Every challenge reshapes the one who listens. The sound remains astonishingly faithful. Time transforms the listener. And because the listener changes, the melody quietly reveals another part of itself that had been waiting all along. A melody does not carry a fixed meaning through time. It carries the possibility of new meaning each time we return. Chapter 3. The memory hidden in sound. Few experiences possess the remarkable ability to awaken memory as effortlessly as sound. A familiar fragrance may remind us of childhood. An old photograph may bring back forgotten faces. A particular place may awaken emotions we believed had long disappeared. Yet music often accomplishes something even more extraordinary. It does not simply remind us of the past. For a brief moment, it allows us to feel as though the past has quietly returned. Sometimes only a single note is enough. A simple melody heard unexpectedly while walking through a busy street. A hymn sung after many years of silence. The first syllables of a familiar mantra. Without warning, memories begin to unfold. Not as isolated facts, but as living experiences. The room where we first heard those sounds. The people who stood beside us. The hopes we carried. The questions we asked. Even the emotions that accompanied those distant moments seem to awaken once again. Psychology has long recognized that memory is deeply connected to emotion. Experiences that carry strong emotional significance are generally remembered more vividly and for much longer than emotionally neutral events. Music often becomes woven into these emotional memories, not merely as background, but as one of the threads holding the entire experience together. This may explain why a melody can become inseparable from a particular season of life. It becomes more than music. It becomes a doorway. Neuroscience offers a fascinating perspective on this phenomenon. Listening to familiar music engages not only auditory regions of the brain, but also networks associated with autobiographical memory, emotion, attention, and personal identity. Rather than activating a single isolated center, music appears to invite many different aspects of our experience into a single moment of awareness. Perhaps this is why the return of a melody often feels so complete. We do not remember only the sound. We remember ourselves within the sound. And yet something even more subtle is taking place. Every time we revisit these memories, they are gently transformed. Modern psychology suggests that remembering is not the simple replaying of a perfectly preserved recording. Memory is reconstructive. Whenever we recall the past, our present understanding quietly participates in shaping what we remember. The memory remains connected to the original experience, but it is illuminated by today's perspective. A melody heard in youth may once have expressed longing. Years later, the very same melody may express gratitude. After another decade, perhaps forgiveness. The sound has not acquired new meaning by itself. Life has slowly entrusted it with new meaning through us. This is one of the quiet miracles of memory. It does not imprison us within the past. It allows the past to grow together with the present. Perhaps this explains why certain spiritual traditions continue to repeat the same chants for decades, sometimes for an entire lifetime. The repetition is not intended to preserve the practitioner exactly as they were. It accompanies their transformation. The mantra remains constant while the human heart continues to deepen. Every repetition becomes another chapter in an ongoing conversation between memory and becoming. There is also a beautiful paradox hidden here. Many people believe they are preserving a sacred melody through faithful repetition. Perhaps the opposite is equally true. The melody is quietly preserving them. Across changing circumstances. Across seasons of joy and sorrow. Across youth, maturity, and old age. Like an old friend who never interrupts, never demands attention, yet is always present when we return. There may come a day when we no longer remember the exact date on which we first learned a mantra. We may forget the room, the teacher, even many of the details surrounding that first encounter. But the melody remains, patiently waiting, not to take us backward, but to help us recognize how far we have traveled. Perhaps this is why certain melodies never become old. They are continually renewed by the changing lives of those who carry them. The sound remembers. The heart remembers. And somewhere between the two, memory quietly becomes wisdom. What kind of person am I becoming as I continue returning to the same melody? Chapter 4. Jung and the Living Symbol. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote that symbols are not lifeless signs, pointing toward a single definition. A genuine symbol is alive. It cannot be exhausted by one explanation, because it continues to reveal new meanings as the person contemplating it continues to grow. This simple insight may help explain why sacred words, chants, and melodies often accompany an entire lifetime without losing their depth. At first glance, a mantra appears to be nothing more than a sequence of repeated sounds. The syllables remain unchanged. The pronunciation remains unchanged. Even the rhythm may remain almost identical from one repetition to the next. If language alone determined meaning, the experience should remain exactly the same. Yet it does not. A beginner and a practitioner with 30 years of experience may pronounce precisely the same mantra. Outwardly, almost nothing distinguishes the two. Inwardly, they may inhabit entirely different worlds. Jung believed that symbols possess the remarkable ability to grow together with consciousness. Rather than imposing a fixed message upon the individual, they invite an ongoing dialogue between the conscious mind and those deeper dimensions of the psyche that are not easily reached through ordinary reasoning. A symbol, therefore, is never fully finished. It continues unfolding throughout life. Perhaps this is why spiritual traditions have preserved certain prayers and mantras for centuries. Not because every generation hears exactly the same message, but because every generation brings a different life to the same words. The symbol remains constant. Understanding continues to evolve. Psychology offers an interesting perspective on this process. Human perception is never separated from personal history. Every encounter with a meaningful symbol is shaped by memory, emotion, expectation, culture, relationships, and countless experiences accumulated over time. The symbol does not change. The field of experience surrounding it does. In this sense, the transformation occurs neither entirely within the symbol nor entirely within the individual. It arises in the relationship between them. This relationship resembles a conversation that never truly ends. Each return asks a slightly different question. The same symbol quietly offers another answer. There are moments when a familiar phrase suddenly carries unexpected significance. A verse we have recited for years may one day speak directly to a personal struggle. A melody that once seemed beautiful may unexpectedly become healing. A simple mantra may, after decades of repetition, evoke gratitude where it once inspired discipline alone. Nothing has been added to the sound itself. Life has expanded the listener's capacity to receive it. Jung often described psychological development as a lifelong process rather than a destination. He called this process individuation, the gradual unfolding of the whole person through an increasingly conscious relationship with both the visible and hidden dimensions of the psyche. From this perspective, returning repeatedly to the same meaningful symbol may become more than an act of remembrance. It becomes an act of participation in one's own development. The symbol serves as a quiet companion, not leading us away from ourselves, but gently leading us deeper into ourselves. Perhaps this is why genuine symbols never become obsolete. Information may become outdated. Opinions may change. Even scientific theories continue to evolve as new discoveries emerge. But living symbols remain strangely timeless. They continue speaking because human beings continue growing. Every stage of life hears them differently. Every season of the soul discovers another layer. Perhaps the greatest gift of a living symbol is not that it tells us who we are. It patiently accompanies us while we discover that for ourselves. What happens to the person who has spent years returning to the same chant? Chapter 5. The harmonium that waited. Some objects quietly accompany an entire lifetime. Unlike people, they do not grow older in the same emotional sense. They do not accumulate memories of their own. They simply remain. Patiently, silently, waiting. A harmonium standing in the corner of a room appears unchanged from one year to the next. Its wooden body carries the same grain. Its keys respond with the same familiar touch. Its reeds continue producing the same notes they produced yesterday. To an outside observer, nothing significant has happened. Yet the person who opens the instrument is no longer the same. The hands resting upon the keyboard have traveled through years of experience. They have known success and disappointment, friendship and solitude, hope and uncertainty. They have comforted others. They have searched for comfort themselves. Every one of these experiences quietly accompanies the fingers as they touch the first key. The harmonium has waited. Life has been teaching the musician. This simple image reflects something far deeper than the relationship between a person and a musical instrument. It reveals the relationship between permanence and transformation. Throughout life, we often imagine that we are returning to familiar places or familiar practices. In reality, it is life that has been preparing us for a different encounter. The instrument has not become wiser. The musician has. Perhaps this is why musicians sometimes describe the strange experience of playing a familiar piece after many years. The notes remain exactly as they always were. Yet they seem to contain meanings that were invisible before. A phrase that once required technical concentration now breathes naturally. A pause between two notes suddenly feels as important as the notes themselves. Silence acquires a voice. The music has not changed. Listening has. Psychologists often speak about expertise as the gradual integration of countless small experiences that eventually become almost effortless. Movements that once demanded conscious attention slowly become natural. Technique fades into the background. Expression comes forward. This transformation is not limited to music. The same principle appears in language, craftsmanship, meditation, and every discipline that matures through years of practice. What begins as repetition eventually becomes presence. There is another, more subtle transformation taking place. At the beginning of any journey, we often believe that mastery consists in controlling every movement. With time, a different understanding emerges. The deepest moments rarely arise from perfect control. They arise from trust. The musician no longer struggles against the instrument. The meditator no longer struggles against the wandering mind. The singer no longer struggles against the voice. Something begins to cooperate. Instead of forcing each moment into existence, we gradually learn to participate in it. Perhaps this is why experienced practitioners so often describe a surprising reversal. They no longer feel that they are producing the music. Instead, they feel as though the music is quietly revealing something already present within them. This experience need not be interpreted as mystical. Psychology may understand it as the natural outcome of deep familiarity, embodied skill, and complete attentional immersion. Contemplative traditions may describe it differently. Yet both perspectives point toward the same lived experience. The boundary between the person and the practice becomes less rigid. The relationship itself becomes the teacher. The harmonium, in this sense, is no longer merely an instrument. It becomes a witness. It has been present through seasons of enthusiasm and seasons of doubt. Through days when the music flowed effortlessly. And through days when even a single note seemed difficult to play. It has asked for nothing. It has judged nothing. It simply waited. Perhaps this quiet patience explains why certain objects become deeply meaningful companions in our lives. Not because they possess extraordinary power, but because they faithfully accompany our ordinary humanity. When we finally sit before them again, we often discover something unexpected. The instrument was never waiting to be played. It was patiently waiting for us to become the person capable of hearing what it had always been saying. If the same melody reveals a different soul, what might silence reveal? Chapter 6. Music as a mirror of consciousness. There is a question that musicians, philosophers, and psychologists have asked in different ways for centuries. What do we truly hear when we listen to music? At first, the answer seems obvious. We hear melody, harmony, rhythm, tempo, perhaps the expressive voice of a singer or the beautiful sound of an instrument. Yet the longer we reflect upon the experience, the less obvious the answer becomes. Two people may sit side by side, listening to precisely the same performance. The notes are identical. The silence between them is identical. Every vibration reaching their ears is almost exactly the same. And yet one person is moved to tears. The other remains almost untouched. The music has not changed. Only the listener has. This simple observation suggests something profound. Perhaps music is not merely something we hear. Perhaps it is also something through which we encounter ourselves. Psychology has long recognized that perception is never completely objective. Our attention is guided by expectations. Our emotions influence interpretation. Our memories quietly color every experience before we are even aware of it. The world we perceive is never separate from the mind that perceives it. Music illustrates this truth with remarkable clarity. A joyful melody may sound comforting to one person. The same melody may awaken sorrow in another, because it has become inseparable from a personal memory. A simple chant may inspire one listener with hope, while another experiences only curiosity. Neither response is wrong. Both reveal something about the inner world of the listener. In this sense, music behaves much like a mirror. A mirror does not create the face it reflects. It simply reveals what is already present. Music often performs a similar function. It does not manufacture our emotions. It gently brings them into awareness. Sometimes we discover peace we did not realize we carried within us. Sometimes we encounter grief that had remained hidden beneath everyday activity. Sometimes gratitude quietly appears where only ordinary routines seem to exist. The melody has not inserted these experiences into us. It has simply illuminated them. Carl Jung frequently observed that meaningful encounters with symbols reveal aspects of ourselves that ordinary thinking often overlooks. Music may function in much the same way. It does not speak only through concepts. It speaks through resonance. Before we understand it intellectually, we often recognize it emotionally. Perhaps this is why music can express realities that language struggles to capture. There are moments when no explanation feels sufficient. No philosophical argument seems complete. No psychological description reaches the heart of the experience. Yet a single melody somehow says enough. Not because it answers every question, but because it reminds us that not every truth can be reduced to words. Contemplative traditions have understood this for centuries. Many describe sacred sound not as information to be analyzed, but as a path of participation. One does not stand outside the experience attempting to explain it. One enters it, slowly, patiently, with attention. The transformation, if it comes, arises not from intellectual effort alone, but from sustained presence. Modern psychology, although using very different language, increasingly recognizes the importance of lived experience. Insight rarely transforms a person by itself. Understanding becomes meaningful only when it is embodied, repeated, and woven into daily life. Music has always possessed this remarkable capacity. It does not merely communicate ideas. It allows ideas to become experience. Perhaps this is why certain melodies remain with us long after the final note has disappeared. They continue sounding inwardly. Not within the instrument, not within the air, but within consciousness itself. The melody ends. Its echo continues. And sometimes that echo quietly accompanies us into conversations, decisions, relationships, and moments of silence we never expected it to reach. Perhaps this is the deepest gift that music offers. Not escape from ourselves, but a clearer meeting with ourselves. The mirror has never asked us to become someone else. It simply invites us to look with greater honesty. And if we accept that invitation, we may discover that the most beautiful melodies were never trying to change the world around us. They were patiently teaching us how to listen to the world within. The melody remained the same. The listener became someone new. Final reflection. The melody that never ends. There is a quiet paradox at the heart of every meaningful journey. We often believe that we are searching for something new. A new place. A new idea. A new understanding. Yet many of life's deepest discoveries arrive not through constant novelty, but through faithful return. We return to a familiar path. We open the same book once more. We sit before the same instrument. We whisper the same prayer. We sing the same melody. Outwardly, almost nothing has changed. Inwardly, almost everything has. Perhaps this is one of the greatest mysteries of human consciousness. The things that accompany us most faithfully throughout life are often the very things that reveal how profoundly we ourselves have changed. The melody does not measure time. We do. The instrument does not accumulate wisdom. We do. The mantra does not grow older. We do. And yet, through this quiet relationship, each seems to mature together with us. Not because they themselves are changing, but because our capacity to receive them continues to deepen. There comes a moment when we stop asking whether a melody is beautiful. Instead, we begin asking a different question. Who am I becoming whenever I return to it? This question reaches far beyond music. It belongs equally to friendship, to love, to learning, to contemplation, to every practice that gently accompanies a human life across many years. Perhaps this is why genuine wisdom is rarely dramatic. It does not arrive with loud announcements or sudden certainty. More often, it grows quietly beneath ordinary days. One repetition, one conversation, one sunrise, one note at a time. Modern psychology teaches us that lasting transformation is usually gradual rather than instantaneous. Philosophy reminds us that self-knowledge is never complete. Contemplative traditions invite us to return again and again to the present moment. Although these paths speak different languages, they quietly converge upon the same insight. Human beings are not finished. We are always becoming. Perhaps that is why certain melodies never seem exhausted. They continue accompanying a journey that has not yet reached its destination. Every return becomes another beginning. Every beginning carries the memory of every previous return. The circle is never closed. It quietly widens. There is another paradox hidden here. We sometimes imagine that we preserve traditions by repeating them faithfully. Perhaps traditions also preserve us. They offer continuity in a world of constant change. They remind us that not everything meaningful must be invented anew. Some truths are rediscovered precisely because they have patiently waited for us. The same melody, a different soul, and perhaps that is enough. Not because every question has found its answer, but because the journey itself has become the answer. The final note fades into silence. Yet the silence is no longer empty. It carries everything the melody has gently awakened. If we listen carefully, we may discover that the music has never truly ended. It has simply found a quieter place to continue. Within memory, within awareness, within the quiet unfolding of an ordinary human life. Perhaps that is where every meaningful melody has always belonged. Not only in the air, but in the person who has learned to listen. A closing thought. The same melody may accompany us for a lifetime. It may witness our questions before we have words for them. It may remain beside us through joy and grief, certainty and doubt, beginnings and endings. In return, it asks almost nothing. Only that we listen. Not merely with our ears, but with the openness to recognize that every sincere return reveals a new horizon within ourselves. Perhaps the greatest transformation does not occur in the melody we sing. Perhaps it occurs in the one who has quietly become capable of hearing it. The melody remained, the years quietly passed. The hands grew older, the heart grew wider. And somewhere between the first note and the last, we discovered that the music had never been changing us by force. It had simply been waiting for us to hear what was always there.